We're going to dive into one of the absolute most powerful forces in advertising, which is the psychology of buying. Is there a fundamental difference between someone buying something versus someone being sold something?
Absolutely. They almost have nothing in common, in my opinion.
Let's talk about that.
Most of what we buy, not all of everything, but the majority, at least 80% of everything we buy to remind ourselves and announce to the world who we are. Bad advertising is features and benefits. It's you, your company, your product, your service. Good advertising isn't about you. It's about the customer.
I'm going to tell you my takeaway for this, for anyone that's listening, is have the confidence and be bold enough to be who you are, represent yourself well, and don't be ashamed of that.
Advertising is a tax you pay for not being remarkable. Welcome to Todd Liles and the Wizard of Ads, a podcast for business owners who want to become remarkable. Table lounger Todd Liles is going to take you deep into the mind of Roy H. Williams, the Wizard of Ads, to unleash the timeless truths and secret strategies that have helped him build dozens of America's most successful businesses. Do you want to build a brand that wins the heart, captures the mind, and creates lasting relationships? Take a deep breath and buckle up. It's time to fly.
Roy, we're going to dive into one of the absolute most powerful forces in advertising, which is the psychology of buying. Some might say the psychology of selling, and maybe there's a difference. But I want to jump into that with you, and I think that's actually going to be my first question, which I just come up with on the spot now that I'm saying it. Is there a fundamental difference between someone buying something versus someone being sold something?
Absolutely. They almost have nothing in common, in my opinion.
Let's talk about that.
Okay. I have to know, as an ad writer, what makes people buy.
Okay.
I know nothing about how to sell.
All right. Now I'm a listener going, I don't understand.
Okay. I'm going to say it again. I need to know why people buy.
Yes.
I do not need to know how to sell.
One is a pull as opposed to a push.
That's one way of looking at it. But more specifically, when you're selling, you're trying to get the advertiser to do what you want them to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And when you're appealing to a person's buying motives, okay, then you say, what do they already care about?
Mm-hmm.
What do they already want? And can I figure out a way to offer them that? And so why people buy is to get what they're after, to get what they want. I just need to know what they want and figure out how to write the ad that offers them the thing they want. And you know what they never want?
What's that?
The product.
Yeah. You know, I grew up on a farm, Roy, and I had mules. Do you know what a mule is?
Absolutely.
Yeah. For those that don't know what a mule
Cross
is.
between a donkey and a horse.
Yeah. And they are what is called stubborn.
Mm-hmm.
A mule is stubborn.
Mm-hmm.
And my stepdad, Wayne, was a relatively angry man. And his father was a lot older, fought in World War II, was a relatively learned man, right? He'd learned the old school way of things. So Wayne would bridle the mule and fight the mule into doing the things the mule didn't want to do. It didn't want to plow the fields. A.W. would come over, and that mule would follow him around literally like a puppy. Like I have these memories of the mule being to A.W.'s right, like right here, and he'd just be rubbing on him, patting him, and he would walk over here, and the mule would come right on over, and the mule would get saddled up, bridled, whatever A.W. wanted. So one day I asked A.W., I said, why does the mule fight Wayne and he does anything that you want? He looks over and gives me a wink, reaches into the front pocket of his overalls, puts a little sugar cube over for the mule. The mule takes it. He rubs the mule. He goes, that's all you got to do.
Mm-hmm.
He was just giving the mule sugar cubes.
Now you know about selling. And now you know about buying. Here's my point. He's buying the affection of the mule. He's buying the affection of the mule. He's not selling the mule. He's buying the affection of the mule with the sugar cubes and the pets. The mule likes sugar cubes, wants more sugar cubes. He likes to be petted. He wants more petting. So what are the sugar cubes and what is the petting for the customer? I'll tell you what it is. Most of what we buy, not all of everything, but the majority, at least 80% of everything we buy to remind ourselves and announce to the world who we are.
Mm-hmm.
It's identity reinforcement. Sometimes when I say identity reinforcement, it's the person you're trying to be, the person you want to be. It's whenever you see yourself in a favorable light and you see yourself the way you hope to be perceived, and it's not phony, but it's you at your best, okay? Anything that speaks to you at your best, and if you feel this is going to make me more of the person I'm trying to be, if this reinforces my sense of who I am and what I stand for, and by aligning myself with this company or this brand, I see a little bit of a reflection of myself in this brand. These people believe what I believe. These people feel what I feel. These people are like me.
Mm-hmm.
And so whenever you're offering a person an opportunity to remind themselves by their choice of this purchase reminds them of who they are, and it helps them announce to the world who they are. And when you get that and you're thinking, okay, I told you in virtually every episode so far, bad advertising is features and benefits. It's you, your
Right.
company, your product, your service. Good advertising isn't about you. It's about the customer and what your product or service will do to change the condition, the happiness of the customer. And so when you talk to them about them, they're really interested. And when they feel like, wow, these people get me, you now have a customer for life. And it doesn't matter if you're selling air conditioning or whether you're selling plumbing services or whether you're selling roofing or electrical work. It just doesn't matter. You know why? They're not buying your product or your service.
Right.
They're buying what you stand for, and they want to have this alignment. They
Yeah.
want to have this sense of, I'm part of Nike. I'm part of Apple computers. That's the kind of person I am. As a matter of fact, 40 years ago, cars had bumper stickers. Every car in America had at least 1-2 bumper stickers on it. Okay? Hadn't been that way for many years. And I was like 19 or 20 when I said to myself, the reason people put that bumper sticker on their car, and very often it was a bumper sticker for a radio station or it was a bumper sticker for some other thing they identified with, okay? They're just wanting absolute strangers to know what kind of person is driving by in that car. That's what they're
Mm-hmm.
doing. When you see what I have on my bumper, that tells you the kind of person who's driving this car. These are absolute strangers that you're never going to meet. They're just in the car behind you or walking through a parking lot. And so you're announcing to the world and you're reminding yourself who you are. And I'm going, most purchases are identity reinforcement. And when the ad writer understands that, then you offer people the thing they want, which is a more clearly defined and strengthened view of self.
Bud Light had an ad campaign. It was extraordinarily minor. It wasn't even an ad campaign. That's even not the best way to put it. It was more like a showing of favor where they gave the Mulaney person a Bud Light can with her image on it.
Mhm.
And she was a transgender, or
Mhm.
is a transgender, pardon me. And that really went way off base with a huge majority of people that identified as a type of people that would drink Bud Light.
Mhm.
From an advertising standpoint, they isolated a lot of people. They suffered for that. Now, they pivoted hard. And their pivot that they did was they brought in Post Malone, who's very popular amongst everyone. You know, everyone loves Post Malone. And then they brought in Shane Gillis. And Shane Gillis makes fun of everybody. He's sort of become the politically incorrect comedian that people accept that he's just being a comedian. And they're doing ads again. And now Bud Light's traffic is going crazy. People are quickly forgetting those off-brand missteps. And again, I'm not making a commentary
No, I'm
on
with
their
you. I'm with you.
choices.
I'm with you. Let me tell you what I do see a lot. Okay. What I believe probably happened at Budweiser, it wasn't a corporate decision. It was somebody in advertising who decided they wanted to use the megaphone of this famous world brand and the budget of this famous brand to make a statement that was important to them.
Yeah.
And so what happened is when people in the advertising department of a company decide that the company should believe what they believe, because I speak for this generation, and this generation isn't like you old people. This generation believes this, and this generation believes this. Hang on a second. You're not describing your generation, you're describing you. And I've seen this happen so many times. It happens way more. It even happens among owner-operated companies. They have a son or a daughter or a nephew or, some person they believe in and they think is really smart. And they go in there and they use the ad budget and they use the platform of the business to make a statement politically or socially or a faith-based statement that they think needs to be made, and they convince the business owner to let them do it. In this case, somebody convinced Budweiser to let them do that.
Yeah.
And they convinced Budweiser that they were falling behind the times if they didn't make this statement. And I'm going, guys, people ask me, you have to really, 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 really believe in the companies you work for. Actually, I really don't. I have to make you believe in them. Now, that's cold as hell. But I'll tell you this. The way that I make my choices is so very weird. I would never assume that everybody else thinks like I do. And anytime the ad writer thinks that other people think like they do, you have a horrible ad writer. And so it's never my job to write what I would write if I owned this company. My job is to write what you would write because you do own this company. And so it's like being an ad writer for the President of the United States. It's never about what you believe. It's about helping that person communicate what they believe if they were a really good writer, but they're not. So you are their writer, but you have to make sure you encapsulate not what you believe, but what they believe. And I sit back and I go, that's what you're doing when you write for a business. And whenever you say, who am I representing? What do they believe? And what do their constituents believe? And as a matter of fact, true story, there was a window of time. I don't know how many years ago it was. This is a bunch of years ago. I'll tell you when it was. Who was the guy? The policeman knelt on his neck.
George Floyd.
And he died. George Floyd. Okay.
George Floyd.
Right there at the George Floyd window, I know who Glenn Beck is. I was not a Glenn Beck fan. I never watched the show. But when I published Pendulum, he evidently got a copy, and his booking person was Colleen Corrine Taylor. She's been with me now for like 27 years. And Colleen Corrine every day, Glenn wants to talk to Roy. Glenn wants to interview Roy. And Corrine's going, yeah, he's not going to do that. So, she was just handling it. And so finally, she comes to me and she says, look, they're saying that Glenn really, really, really wants to talk to you. He wants to get you on the phone. He wants to put you on this deal. And I said, all right, fine. I actually like Glenn. We got to know each other really well. As a human being, I actually like him. Okay. But what he said was, he says, a few days earlier, the reason I decided to talk to him, he had made a statement and everybody just lost their mind. And he had said, I think maybe we need to put ourselves in the shoes of black people in this country. And maybe black lives do matter. Maybe we need to actually look at things the way they're looking at them and see, do they have a point? And man, everybody just flipped out. It was like Budweiser putting Mulaney on a can. Yeah. Okay. I think it was only one can.
And I wasn't trying to be disrespectful to Mulaney's first name. I just can't remember it. I think maybe it's Dylan.
Everybody gets it. Everybody gets it. It's not the issue.
Honestly like, this is a good topic, but boy, am I going into a danger zone?
It's not about what you or I believe. It's irrelevant.
Yeah.
What we're saying is, what did they do?
It's what they did.
And what I'm saying is, so when you look at that brand and the people who buy that product, whenever I say if a thing doesn't belong, but
Right.
it fits, well, that didn't belong and didn't fit.
Yeah.
If it doesn't belong and doesn't fit, then it was a mistake. But if it doesn't belong but amazingly fits, that's amazing. That's just like, wow, that was huge. So here's the thing. Whenever I was headed somewhere, with
Lindbeck.
Glenn. And so I said, hey, Glenn, man, I said, I'm going to tell you something. And this is, I don't know how many people are listening. I was just on the phone, and he was in Dallas. And I said, hey, look, whenever you said what you said, I said, nobody wants you to be, the people that listen to you don't want you to be a voice of reason. They want you to lead the villagers with torches and pitchforks.
Ooh.
And I said, when you quit leading villagers with torches and pitchforks, you quit being relevant. And I said, I'm proud of you for taking that position and saying, hey, maybe we need to look at it through their eyes. And I said, but it's not going to work for you. I said, this is not what people expect from you, and they're not going to have it.
Mm.
I said, but I'm proud of you. I said, I actually admire you for it. And so he called back a few days later and he goes, boy, you nailed it. He goes, man, oh man, you spoke truth into my life that day. And he goes, I understand. He goes, wow. And I said, hey, I'm sorry. I said, I wish it wasn't like this. Now, Budweiser had a brand, and somebody at the top of Budweiser doesn't get to change what that brand stands for.
Right.
And Glenn didn't get to quit being the Glenn back everyone knows and loves, right? The guy that leads the villagers with the torches and pitchforks and keeps everybody outraged. And
Did he go back to that?
I don't know.
Yeah.
He had me come out a couple times. We did a bunch of videos together, but he wanted just to talk about the book, my Pendulum book, right?
Great
I think I
book.
wrote that in 2012. The point is, and by the way, people can get it for free at mondaymorningmemo.com. If you look at the top, there's like some little nav bar.
I'll make sure to link it in the show notes.
Cool, because
Yeah.
you can just download the PDF.
Awesome.
I mean, it's like literally the whole PDF of the whole book is there. Just hit download. It's downloaded. I'm not trying to sell
I'm
books.
very happy to have bought my copy, though.
Mhm. Well, no.
Because I can read through it.
Yeah. And so I've got, the point is, I'm not here selling books. The idea that he loved the book, read the book made a lot of sense to him, and it was talking about what would in fact happen in the future. And I started teaching that stuff in 2004, and by 2012, a lot of it had already happened,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot more of it has happened since then. And that's why Glenn was fascinated by it. He goes, man, this is like right on the mark, and you wrote it a long time ago.
I tell you, to me, this is relevant. We're talking about storytelling. We're talking about building this brand. We're making a point that when someone builds an entity and it takes on a life, it needs to live that life. And I'll share with you part of what I have thought about here is Walt Disney, specifically not Walt Disney, but Walt Disney and the brand that he built with Disney World and Disney Entertainment. And Disney got so popular, they were able to buy multiple other brands. They ended up being able to buy Fox and all these other things. And Disney forever was known as a family-oriented, family-friendly brand. That's the type of content that you're going to get on there. And then they bought Star Wars and a multitude of other things. Well, somewhere along the way, they decided to go against traditional Disney brand approaches to stories that they told. And the stories were great. But even my kids were like, this doesn't feel like a Disney movie. And I said this to Shannon. It was an observation. I said, you know what's weird to me about this? They own so many properties, CBS, they own different music companies, they own different production companies. No one would have cared if when some of these properties that they had that didn't align under the Disney umbrella, if they would have been produced, say, by Fox.
Mm-hmm.
No one would have cared. It would have fit. Fox has always been sort of irreverent, Family Guy and all of these different cartoons that just go out on a limb, and people love them. They adore them. They're great. And probably the same audiences that are watching Fox content are watching Disney content.
Right.
But they're very offended when you cross the line as to what's supposed to be where.
Mm-hmm.
So it's fascinating to me that we're talking about this because it's what it says to me is that, especially if you're in a multi-generational company and someone has built a culture and a brand and maybe that was started with your dad and you've carried it along, you do have a responsibility of protecting it. and they're buying from you for a reason, and right down to the concept of you're going to sell this one day. Are you going to align with business partners that are going to protect what the public has come to trust to know? Or are they going to change it? And do you care? I would care. It would be important to me to know these things.
The thing that I want to underscore about what you just said, this is a big idea, but I think the audience is smart enough to understand immediately what we're talking about. When a brand has a personality, see, Disney has a personality. It is a character that lives in your imagination.
Mm-hmm.
It is an entity. It is a personality that occupies. It's an imaginary person. This Disney, it's an imaginary person, but the brand that has a personality is an entity exactly like a person in a novel or a television show or a movie. Cheers, Seinfeld. Yeah, those are actors playing someone other than themselves. So the people they're playing are imaginary people. But we have expectations about these people. We feel like we know these people, and we know when one of these characters says something that character would never say. We know when that character does something that character would never do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that a bad writer came in the show and took the character outside what we believe about that character.
The end of Game of Thrones. Why did they end that wonderful series that way? That's so off-brand.
Right, that was weird.
Off-brand.
I agreed. My point is, whenever a brand has a personality, there are things we expect and don't expect from that brand. And as you said, The Simpsons and Family Guy, sure, great shows, but that's what we expect from Fox in their animation. We don't expect that from Disney. And so we're annoyed and insulted when Disney is no longer the Disney we know and love.
When Glenn becomes sensitive and reasonable as opposed to the Rush Limbaugh copycat.
That's not his brand.
It's not his brand.
And I want to say this again. I like Glenn Beck.
I do
As
too.
a person, I like him a lot.
I didn't agree with all the things that Rush said, but Rush was entertaining as hell to listen to.
Exactly. And so I'm saying I actually like Glenn. After I met him and got to know him, I consider him a friend. But I told him, I said, I'm just talking about what you represent in everybody's mind. And I said, when you quit being that, then you quit being Glenn Beck. And I said, I'm sorry, but you're pigeonholed. Get used to it. You don't get to change. And if Joe Rogan quit being Joe Rogan, he would lose a lot of people. And I'm going, when you have a brand, and you don't have a brand unless your brand has a personality.
Yeah.
You don't have a brand, you just have a company and a logo. But when your brand has a personality, you have to be consistent in what that personality is.
I want to ask you, I'm gonna make this about me for a moment.
Okay.
And maybe I shouldn't. Maybe that's a mistake. But as a human, I have very strong opinions about what is right is wrong, about what is right and what is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up as redneck as anyone could be, working with my hands, doing all those things. But yet at the same token, I sought education and I sought loving on people that weren't like me.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't share every blue collar thought that probably, maybe not for this audience, but for my other audiences,
Right.
I probably don't share every exact thought that they think that I share. I've never said all the things I think, but I'm pretty much I want to love on people and respect people. I want to draw hard lines when they're being stupid and saying things that are wrong and immoral.
Right.
But what you may think is wrong and immoral, what I may think may be different.
Right.
Should I just leave that stuff alone? And am I potentially causing harm to the brand of Todd Liles and Service Excellence by letting people know that, no, actually I am a really nice guy, but I also have a sword in my closet and I will bring it out when I have to, but I will defend people that you might not thought that I would defend.
Well, see, here's the thing. And I'm going to say, no, I don't think that's a mistake, and here's why. All right? It's a filter. And every close friend I have in the world annoys me in some way. And there are things about that person I wish I could change. And I promise you, everybody that knows me wishes there were things they could change about me. And they wish I was different, and I'm not. And so all of us, all the time, have to make allowances for the other people in our lives. If we know them real, if we see them true, and we know who they really are, and that's what it means to have a real connection. Well, we're having to overlook some things, always. We always have to overlook some things. And, okay, so people have to overlook some things about you. Are there enough things they like and admire about you and that they believe in and they value in you to put up with the crap they wish was different? That's all it comes down to.
Gotcha.
And I'm saying, so if you, or if anyone decides I'm going to be exactly who people expect me to be and need me to be and want me to be, then you will be very sad and empty in your life. You will not have a sense of self.
Very good.
And so that's my opinion.
Well, that leads us right into a campaign that ties into this perfectly, in my opinion. And what we're going to do here is we're going to take a look at Dove's Real Beauty campaign. So up on the screen here, we see 4 like half ads that would be in a magazine that they put out inside of their Real Beauty campaign. And Roy, sort of describe what you're seeing and why, in your opinion, this ad works so well.
Okay. In a movie, it would be called the DP, the director of photography.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it is in a magazine campaign like this, but whoever chose the photographs was an absolute genius. Absolute genius. Because these 4 women are very, very, very different from each other, but they have one characteristic that is exactly, they all score very, 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 very high in one way.
Is it their beautiful smile?
Nope. They do have good smiles. In other words, the angle, the eyes, and the personality.
Good personality.
They have you get a sense of who they are as a person and kind of their mannerisms. They're not all the same person. And you read several characteristics into the poses, the angle of the head, the glimmer in the eyes, the smile in the eyes combined tell you a lot. And I'm looking at this, I'm saying all of them has a very, very distinctive features. Very distinctive features. And so they are not the generic face. There's some faces that look like 10 million other faces. They're just kind of the standard. There's, especially on television, there's a standard pretty girl face.
Right.
And all pretty girls look exactly alike.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones that have a little bit of a distinctive bone structure, a distinctive...
Takes your eye there.
Yeah, and all of a sudden you notice them.
it.
So all of these have very, very, very distinctive faces. Like the bottom right corner there, the girl with freckles,
Mm-hmm.
okay? She doesn't have a problem with having freckles, right? And the lady with wrinkles. And they said, the girl, is she fat or fit?
Yeah.
All right? And I'm saying, okay, the fact that she has her arms up and behind her head and she's wearing a strapless gown. Does this what I'm saying is she's making a statement about how she feels about herself. Now, to me, because I'm 67 years old, by far the most attractive one is the gray-haired woman.
Oh, she actually is the most attractive one.
Well, what I'm saying is...
And it says gray or gorgeous.
Well, she's both. And what I'm saying is withered and wonderful. Yeah, it's both. Fat and fit, both.
Oh, good point, because it doesn't say or.
No.
It just gives it as an option.
I'm checking all of these.
Good,
what I'm saying is, I'm saying the flaws make the freckle face girl incredibly attractive. And I'm saying whenever you celebrate the thing that makes you different instead of being ashamed of it, then you're not only mentally and emotionally healthy, you actually turn your distinguishing, quote, flaw into a feature.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a bug, it's a feature.
It's a feature.
And so what I'm saying is, as the girl is obviously super happy, super confident, and in the black strapless gown. And then the gray-haired woman, she's working that gray hair as hard as she can, pulling it behind her ear, showing off her cheekbones and her jaw.
Oddly enough, she a little bit looks like Penny.
I know. Yeah.
I didn't do that on purpose.
No, it's not lost on me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so my wife, Penny, we've been married 48 years. So, yeah, I know what she looks like.
It just hit me. Did you select all these ads?
No.
Yes, but maybe subconsciously. I was like,
the woman, the bandana on her head and the earrings, and she has the definitive proud African features. You know what I mean? The eyes, the nose, the lips, the cheeks, the headband with the knot on the side, and then the earrings. And I'm going, yeah, everybody is celebrating the thing that makes them a little bit different, and they're flaunting it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going, okay, So those expressions of confidence and those expressions of contentment with who and what they are. And I'm going, that's what attracts us. We all want what they have. And you know what it is? Self-confidence despite the fact that you're tall and really slim or short and a little bit square built. And you know what I mean? It's like, no, look, I'm proud of who and what I am. I like the way I am. I am thrilled with the way I am. And let me be even more the way I am because I'm happy about it. And they're working it. And I'm just going, so it's the confidence we see in them and the fact that they are so contented and self-satisfied and their beaming eyes and smiles and their postures and how they accent themselves. We're going, I wish I was like that.
Roy, I like where this episode went. And we went into the psychology of buying, and I frankly had no idea it was going to go into such a deep and personal conversation. I'm going to tell you my takeaway for this, for anyone that's listening, is have the confidence and be bold enough to be who you are, represent yourself well, and don't be ashamed of that. But I want to ask you what your takeaway is for the listener today.
My takeaway is, even when we wander way off topic and start making it more about just a personal conversation we're letting you listen in on, and you continue to listen, I really appreciate that. Because part of me says to myself, I'm going, wow, I'm being really self-indulgent, and so is Todd. And I hope people are getting something out of this. My experience has been over the years, these are very often episodes that people love when everybody just lets their hair down and they get to plug into a conversation between friends. Other people might feel cheated. Well, they were supposed to talk about advertising and they didn't. Those are just self-indulgent little guys. I'm going, yeah, I can see it going both ways. So the people that are still listening, thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for putting up with us. That's my takeaway.
Thank you, Roy.
You've been listening to Table Lounger Todd Liles and the Wizard of Ads, where the bold win and the remarkable reign. If you enjoyed this episode,